Are we good to go?
Yeah.
Oh, they've just come on. Okay, I will now call this meeting to order at 9 a.m. and welcome everyone. We'll start with the territorial acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge with respect the history and living culture of the Anishinaabeg, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. We recognize that these lands are the territories of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, collectively known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the keepers of this land. Georgian Bluffs is located on lands encompassed by treaties 45.5, 67, 72, 82, and 93. We reflect on our role as treaty people and the need to live in respect and peace and show respect to the First Peoples who inhabit these lands and waters. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda today? Mayor Mackey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to add, I guess I looked to the clerk whether or not it needs to be in closed session or not, but disposition of property, just a further discussion on.
So that will be under new business or closed session?
Or, yeah, I'm not sure if it needs to be enclosed, but Township Chapter sent a resolution in regards to our position on the lagoons and the biodigester. So I'd just like to start that conversation. And
Yes, Rachel, please go ahead.
Thank you. And through the chair, I would recommend that there could be like a high level discussion today, and then councils could go away and have that closed session discussion and then bring that back to the committees. Unless you want to get a little more in depth, but I would say a high level discussion outside of closed would be fine. Unless details are having, then you might want to go into closed.
Yeah, because when I look at the minutes from September, it was on there under new business as divesting. So it's already been there in open session. So I'm not sure how much
we
we
haven't
can.
talked about any details, but and I'm not looking to talk about details. I'm just looking at how we start a process,
Okay.
Which likely involves an evaluation or an appraisal of the property and things like that. Just want to start the process anyway. So anyway, have that under new business plan.
So because it was under new business in September, I'm wondering if it should go into unfinished business this time. We're going to spend more time figuring out where to put it than we're going to spend talking about it.
As long as we're talking about it.
Okay. Okay, so then the recommendation is that the agenda be approved as amended. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mayor Mackey and Deputy Mayor McKay. Any discussion? I will call the vote. All in favor? That's carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest to declare? Seeing none, you may declare it any time.
Okay, I found this on the web for, are there any declarations?
Okay, apparently my phone, which is supposed to be shut off, is talking to me. Excuse me. While I shut it off. Sorry. You may declare at any time through the meeting if the pecuniary interest does arise. Minutes of previous meetings. The recommendation is that the minutes of the BioGRID Joint Board of Management meeting held on September 22nd, 2025 be adopted. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Deputy Mayor McKay. Is there any discussion? I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. We are on to item 6.1, delegations and public question period. The recommendation is that the 2024 draft financial statements be received for information. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Mayor Mackey, and I will turn to Tracy. Welcome and thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
So I'd like to thank the board for having me here today, and I'd like to thank Samantha for her assistance for the audit. As your auditor, we have the responsibility to communicate with those charged with governance, which is you, the board. Our report in the agenda package contains all the required communications under Canadian auditing standards. The communication is very similar year to year, and it's very similar to the BDO communication that you saw last year. So I'll just provide a brief summary of the communication and a high-level overview of the draft financial statements. If you have any questions, please ask as we go through the presentation, and we can address them at that time. So under a couple of pages in, under engagement status, MMP has substantially completed the audit of the 2024 financial statements. In order to release the finals, we need board approval of the draft financial statements, and we also need receipt of signed representation letter and subsequent events up until the approval date. On the next page, under independence, on an annual basis, the auditor is required to confirm their independence from the biodigester. I can confirm that MMP is independent and qualified to issue an audit opinion on financial statements. A couple of highlights from the significant auditing and accounting matters on the next page. Materiality for 2024 audit was $12,500. That was based on industry standards of 3% of average expenses. There were no significant deficiencies in the internal controls that we tested during as part of our audit. The unadjusted differences identified in the attached management representation letter in Appendix B were not material and did not affect our audit opinion. So those are just some of the highlights of the communication. Is there any questions on the communication before we move on to the draft financial statements?
Any questions from committee?
So the draft financial statements, they are separate in your agenda package. The auditor's report is on page 2 of the financial statements. It is an audit, so it's the highest level of assurance that can be provided by a public accounting firm. Management is responsible for the financial statements. It is our auditor's responsibility to issue an opinion on the financial statements prepared by management. As in the prior year, there is a qualification under on revenue over the completeness of tipping fees. So that has been there for a number of years. Except for that qualification, our opinion in the second paragraph is that the consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the biodigester as at December 31st of 2024 in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So at the bottom of the audit report, it talks about management responsibilities. And then on the second page of the audit report is the responsibilities of the auditor. On page 5 is the statement of financial position or the balance sheet. If we could go back one. Thank you. On December 31st, 2024, the biodigester had cash of $519,000. The future capital receivables of $238,988 are owing to the biodigester by each of Georgia Bluffs and Chatsworth. There were no capital levies during the last few years, but these are the amount owing are for the past capital levies recorded as revenue of the biodigester and transferred to the biodigester reserve. So although they're not required to be cash flowed, they are owing to the biodigester as they are reported as a reserve fund of the biodigester. The reserve fund is $565,000 and it's reflected in the accumulated surplus. In the liability section, there is $75,000 owing back to the municipalities for amounts loaned to the biodigester for operating cash, and $297,000 owing to Georgia Bluffs for expenses paid on behalf of the biodigester. The accumulated surplus is made up of 2.1 million in net tangible capital assets, and a capital reserve of 565,611. So there is no, at the end of 2024, there is no operating surplus or deficit at the end of 2024. On the next page, page 6 is the revenue and expenses for the year. Again, there was no capital contributions and no capital expenses in 2024. Therefore, the revenues and expenses all relate to operations, except for the 185,770 in amortization. So the revenues were 312,000. The expenses were 393,000, but that included the amortization. So the annual surplus report on this page, again, is not the operating surplus. On the next page, that deficit of 81,000 is adjusted for the amortization. And then on the next page, you can see that if we add back the amortization, you end up with an increase in net financial assets of 104,752. So that is your operating surplus for the year. The current surplus, the $104,000, was used to fund the accumulated deficit from the prior year. So there were 17,177 carried forward from the prior year, and then the remaining 87,555 was transferred to reserve. So I don't normally look at the notes, but I would like to just take a minute and look at note 5. It actually kind of more clearly shows how that surplus was transferred to reserves and used for the surplus. If we could just page 13 on for the budget note, it shows the annual it shows the deficit of the 81,000 with the add back of the amortization. And then you transferred 87,635 to reserve and use 17,117 to fund the prior year deficit. So then that's why there's no operating surplus or deficit carried forward for 2024. So everything is in reserves. I would like to just look at note 6 to make sure that this is still current with respect to where you're at this point for the future of the biodigester. In the bottom paragraph there, at this point, I understand you're going to be talking a little bit more today about maybe future, but at this point, we have disclosed that you're currently working under the option 3 that was approved with the partial decommissioning plan. So that is what is disclosed as of today in these statements, and although that might further with your discussion later in the meeting, you may be moving to something else, but just want to make sure that you are comfortable with that disclosure. These are your financial statements, so if something needs to change in the draft wording, then that can happen. So. And then that is kind of a high-level overview. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take some questions.
So at this point, what we're looking at in that last statement in number 6 is actually the end of 2024. So we've got another whole year in there now.
Yes, but if there is if you've made a decision that's different than what was at that point, even though it's after the year, and that should be disclosed as a subsequent event.
Go ahead, Naramaki.
I believe that's reflective of the wishes of the two councils, Madam Chair.
Yeah, wanted to be clear that we're a year back on that one.
Yeah. And like I said, you may be moving forward to a different point, but at this point, you had to make a final decision to move in any particular direction other than what was approved at that time. And that was actually July 7th. That was
Of this year, yes.
this year that was approved.
Thanks,
And
Madam
it's
Chair.
pretty much from the wording is pretty much from your minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Tracy. Can you just give a little more definition of the liability for contaminated sites and where that might apply with the biodigester and the lagoons?
Yeah, so currently there's nothing recorded on these financial statements. So we have looked at the standards, and until you decide to shut everything down, then that would be the time that you would need to budget for and look at the costs of decommissioning.
So maybe through you to Mr. Thompson, would that be considered in the engineer's reports, the potential contamination of the tanks that we're going to potentially have to dredge out? The only other thing that comes to mind is a few years ago, we had a high concentration of salt that ended up on our property from a neighboring property. And I just never heard anything as far as what the concentrations were or whether there was any potential issue on our site because of a neighboring site. But that's what kind of came to mind when I just read this contaminated sites part. And whether it's something that we need to look into any further or whether that has already been looked into, I don't know.
I think it's a reasonable point. I think we should probably reach out to the consultant that's doing the decommissioning to make sure that that's part of the work that they're doing. And I don't know if they have already taken that into consideration, but I think it's a really critical point that you bring up. So if they haven't, we need to take a pride on that that's a concern of ours to make sure they include that in the decommissioning.
Aqua may have something on that, because did that not have to do with testing of one of the wells on that side of the property? Is that not where that came up?
I think you're right,
Mm-hmm.
but I just don't remember hearing any
Yeah.
reports back out.
So Aqua might be able to give us some information on that one. Anything else? Thank you. Unless Sam has something to add or, perfect, good. Thank you very much, Tracy.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's no further discussion. I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. We have no correspondence. We're now on to the 2026 draft budget. Recommendation that the 2026 draft operating and capital budget be endorsed by the board and that staff be directed to forward the draft budget to the mayor of the township of Georgian Bluffs and the council of the township of Chatsworth for consideration in their proposed budgets. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor McKay and Deputy Mayor Pringle, and I will turn to Samantha.
Thank you, and through you. So we do have in front of you today for your consideration your draft 2026 budget. There are not significant changes from that of the 2025 budget. Although the budget is structured to maintain the same transfer that both municipalities have been historically provided, that is being done so in hopes to mitigate some of the fluctuations that may be experienced as part of our partial decommissioning project. So when looking at it, heat and hydro, we're looking at maintaining the same. We do estimate 2025 annual actuals to be slightly less. However, we feel it is appropriate to maintain the same budget amount as the site may have a bit more activity just with a bit more usage when they are going through some of that decommissioning that may impact some of the hydro consumption. Audit fees, we do have a slight increase as a general overall. Staff do currently have out a request for proposal related to 2025 external auditing services for the 2025 year end, and we are waiting results to see what does come in. The biodigester board audit was included as one of the scope of that overall RFP. We have our service contract with Sound Septic, so this is for them to collect the septage material from the Sunset Strip and dispose of it. They are the contractor for that specific area. Maintaining the budget should be sufficient for this line item. This service contract, so this is with Ontario Clean Water Agency for the operation and administration of the site. And then a $10,000 administrative fee is paid to the Township of Georgian Bluffs for us doing all administrative tasks associated with the BioGRID. So there is a slight increase, and that is reflective of an increase in Ontario Clean Water Agencies. Telephone and internet, we're looking to maintain it. Insurance and insurance, there is a slight reduction that we are anticipating through discussions with our insurance provider. They are able to find some efficiencies, so we have adjusted the budget for that. There is no change in your insurance coverage with those efficiencies. Repairs and maintenance, there is a proposed 2026 increase to be reflective of a portion of the hydrographic acoustic sonar survey that the board approved at their September meeting, and the removal of burn vegetation. So we have adjusted the 2026 budget to be reflective of those. Then we have property taxes, a slight increase to reflect what Georgian Bluffs is anticipating will be a property tax increase. Then we have your decommissioning report, which you did receive the results of, so that will not continue. Then we have our new capital, which the board had discussed, and that is the storage tank condition assessment, clean out, and a portion of phase 1, the partial decommissioning. As the partial decommissioning will be a multi-year, we've tried to break it down into different phases for each year so that you're not approving a whole budget in 1 year and no budget in next year's. We do have flexibility if things progress quicker or not as quick as what we maybe anticipate for budget purposes to realign some of that financial funding aspect for it. When looking at the revenue side, you'll see that the sewage revenue has increased. That is to be reflective of the new rates that the board had approved at their previous meeting, where all tipping is at the same rate opposed to discounts for some and not others. Those letters have went out. I don't know if the board has heard any feedback on the letters, but just want to highlight they did go out. Bank interest, we are looking to maintain the same, although prime rates have been slightly coming down. You'll see there is an overage that we anticipate at the end of 2025. So although the rates are going down, we do anticipate for 2026 the revenue to be comparable to the budget. As mentioned before, maintaining the same Georgian Bluffs and Chatsworth contributions as in previous year. And then to fund some of the capital projects, we would be pulling a bit of funds from your reserves as planned and as discussed with the board for the partial decommissioning. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Any questions?
Well, I just heard a comment from the hauler that he was quite pleased with how things are working out.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Madam Chair, thanks, Samantha, for the report. I guess it's probably not a question so much for you. The budget amount for heat and hydro, I guess from an operational standpoint, I'm struggling with where we're supplying heat and how long we need to continue to supply heat on something that we're decommissioning.
Go ahead.
So through you, the lagoon also does have a portion of hydro to ensure that the aeration and stuff is complete. We are still heating some of the, I'm going to call it the plant, the building, to ensure that it doesn't freeze in these cold temperatures. So that is why there is some heat and hydro costs associated with that to ensure it doesn't freeze and then trigger the contaminated sites if it is to completely burst, in essence.
Do we have any idea when the decommission of the equipment inside the heated building will occur. It seems like we're wasting money when we decided to decommission. We just need to get it done and get some of those pipes taken apart so that we don't have to heat a building for it's no reason, but
Excuse me, sorry. I reached out to get a contact at the contractors for decommissioning, so I can add that to the good question. I'll find out. I can get a bit of information about the timeline and also details about the contamination or potential contamination.
Any further comments or questions? Okay, so then, if there's no further discussion, I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. So into unfinished business, Mayor Mackey, I will turn that to you.
thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to confirm that George and Bluffs had received the resolution from the Township of Chatsworth and have a discussion about what the next steps might be. It is my belief that an appraisal of the site would need to be done. And when George and Bluffs might consider our request to exit the partnership.
So we were talking about it earlier and we can't remember when the letter came through or how we dealt with it at council. And it could be just something in with the new CAO coming on that it got overlooked in our business. So we'll have to look into that. Get you an answer. My apologies.
No, not an issue. I just don't want to lose sight that
No.
our council has sent that resolution, and I would like to start a process. And I'm not sure
Okay.
whether that's our senior staff having some discussions initially and reporting back to whether it be this board, but our council is interested in starting the process.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Apologies for my voice. I just was gonna ask, was there a letter or was the resolution where we looked, there was no letter, or I'm kind of embarrassed asking the question, but did we miss a letter or was the resolution the moment, for lack of a better word?
Rachel.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, it was a letter and it was a motion, and we can resend it. It was October 2nd we sent it through, but we can resend
I
it.
think October 2nd sounds about right. I started October 6th, so I think you got caught in the transition, a few days before. So I will track down the letter and we can have that on one of our first agendas. We don't meet again before the end of the year.
I'm just going back to October 8th and looking at that agenda. It was not on that one.
So
So it'll be somewhere after that, so leave it with us. We'll track that down and figure out what happened.
So I guess, we had an evaluation or appraisal done, I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago. I think it would be important for both councils to know, to have a current appraisal on the site. That's a starting point. Not sure if that direction can be given at this table today to have staff seek out a current appraisal. Irregardless, it's going to be information that we're going to require, so I'm not sure on the timing of an appraisal, but it was one of the engineering firms on one of the reports that we received a few years ago that did an appraisal, and I think that should be updated.
Yeah.
The first question asked, like,
Yeah.
No, I just comment, I guess, or question. Are you looking, like, we're just in the process of starting this decommissioning, in case you want it before it's completed, or when are you looking to actually, like, guys, like, it almost seems like you want it during the process when we haven't got through the process yet, so I'm not sure where the evaluation is gonna help us at this time.
I will, no, we are 50% partners now. The decommissioning is 50% our responsibility.
Right.
Both councils want the biodigester decommissioned. our council does not, as a future owner or half owner of the site, just with the lack of material that the township of Chatsworth is sending there, we just don't see the merit in the ongoing cost of looking after a site that we really have very little use for. So that's the kind of the discussion that's occurred at our table, Grant.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, and that brings clarity to what.
And we know we have a responsibility to make sure the site's cleaned up,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
before we can get to that point. But over the next year, we would like to
Good. Appreciate
have a
clarity.
strategy to sell to our good partners here or an outside partner,
Right.
if that's the case.
No, appreciate the clarity.
Okay, I'm just going through, it was on the October 15th. And from the minutes of that meeting, so it was on the consent agenda. And the motion was that staff be directed to bring forward a report to council regarding the status of the decommissioning and to address the matters outlined in item, which would be the letter from you about the BioGRID decommissioning. So that report hasn't come back to Georgian Bluffs Council yet, so that's where we're at. Sorry, that took a little digging to find it, but I tried to back through, so. That answers the question, and we will continue on with that report coming back here, and then we'll get back to you.
So, sorry, Madam Chair, does the board see any merit in starting a process to get an up-to-date current appraisal? I just want some action items starting to take place, or it's going to be information that's going to be required. I know where we are as a township of Chatsworth in this, and I know your council hasn't had a discussion, but
I'll just go to Sam first here.
So through you, in saying this, I recognize the board does have a vested interest. However, that decommission or that appraisal report would be something that is used between two negotiating bodies, that those two bodies can't discuss it together in this setting. It needs to be between the two councils. I know it seems odd because there is an interest to the board, but that direction unfortunately cannot come from the board because you're two bodies of a negotiation. And you've already provided notice of your intent.
One council has provided notice to the other council, so we're now at that level.
so I would be content the direction be given to senior staff to outline a process for us to establish in starting these negotiations. Is that fair?
And I think that's what's coming out of the recommendation that came from Georgian Bluffs back in October. So from that, Rachel?
Yes, no, I was, the treasurer outlined that perfectly, but the only item I just wanted to just clarify was in the motion. We did try to specify as much as possible Chatsworth's intent. So one of the items is that the desire to exit the agreement was following the partial decommissioning was completed. And then it did direct staff to work with BioGRID staff to bring forward information. So I would recommend that certainly it's delegated back to staff, but it goes to Georgian Bluffs, and Chatsworth just requires a response to kind of start the process. So I think we're in a good spot right now, but.
Okay.
Okay.
I was excited. I'll get hung out to dry if I do.
Well, and I think, as I say, CEO Thompson was just getting started with us as that was happening, so it's maybe slipped a little bit, but there's a motion on the books that says we're doing that,
Yeah.
so.
Good stuff.
So we have no new business, we don't need a closed session today. So the last recommendation is that the meeting be adjourned at 9:35 a.m. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Deputy Mayor McKay, all in favor? It's carried.
You should chair the police services.